Board with Friends Spotlight. Joggle Games.
I mean, I'm not allowed to tell that story because Zach wants us to stay on topic.
Stay on topic.
All right, well, we got a little off topic.
Again, 40%. I'm lazy and I'm a mooch. That's what I do.
This is not that kind of podcast.
All right, well, James, thanks for being on the show. You are if I remember correctly, it was a couple of you part of Joggle Games?
Yeah, so yeah. I have a company called Joggle Games, and the other people involved aren't really like employees so much as kind of volunteer friend employees.
Those are the best kind, right?
Yeah, they really are. That no health benefits, no expectations of wages. But yeah, so it's like a hobby company, right? It's not like we don't take it very seriously. But I would say that we do take the product we're making seriously. You know, we don't take the company part seriously. We kind of think of like companies in general as kind of like a flawed system that exists in today's society. So we're kind of eschewing the general corporate structure that you would expect, and creating more of a ability for a work-life balance within it without actually calling you an employee. You're more like it's almost like you're an independent contractor, but you're also it's up to your own free will to decide how much effort you want to put in everything we do.
So you're keeping the fun in the projects that you do?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we only do stuff we like doing. Like every game we work on is either something that, it was a pre-existing game from like a long time ago that we were trying to get the license to, which of course I can't talk about any of those because you know how that goes. But
yeah.
Or it's like something that we designed in-house that we just love playing our own design. And so we've been playing it over and over and over again. So it's like free playtesting, right? And then once we get to a point where we're happy with it, that's when we start bringing in strangers and people at like game clubs and shows and stuff, or just like random friends to play it with and get more feedback about how they feel about it. Because you can kind of start playing this game of like inside baseball where the mechanics so well that it just makes sense to you, but the game doesn't actually work on like a core level until you show it to people that didn't see it from its initial genesis.
I liked your approach when we first met at the Promise Gaming Guild. You just walked up to me and said, "Do you want to learn a new game?" And I'm always game to learn a game, pun intended, I guess. So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And then I didn't realize until maybe 5 minutes in that it was your game. Like you were actually, having me play a game. I don't think it was a playtesting stage at this point, but it was still, your approach was very good. Just walking up like, "Hey, you want to play a game?" And sure.
Yeah, I mean, you were sitting there with another person who was a stranger, and you hadn't. You guys were just like chilling, and it was the end of the night. You guys had all come to see the Fireball Island demo or whatever, which was really cool. And I just, I was like, you know what? I bet you they'd like to play a 2-player game really quick. I know Randy was here. He's he's the developer. He's like my development partner. I'd even call him like development lead. He's the one who tries to break every game we make. And so I knew he was there and he'd be willing to show you guys how to play. So I just pulled it out and I said, "Hey, check this out." I have no ego about it, right? Like either you like it or you don't. If you don't like it, that's totally fine with me. In fact, I've told every person who has, so one of the funny things about Kickstarter is when you go on Kickstarter, the first message you get when you launch is just like, "Oh, send us your thing," or "Oh, give us $500 and we'll get you 5,000 backers." It's like, what? And so, but one of the things that I get a lot are these reviewers who want you to like pay them to do a review. And I was like, listen, guys, I don't need your review. Okay. The game speaks for itself. If you want to review it, that's cool. But I want to make sure that if you review it, you're only going to give your honest opinion. I don't want any of this like paid opinion stuff.
Wait, back up. I could get paid to review games?
Absolutely. You could. I mean, people do it all the time. Like, I mean, 90% of the AAA titles are paid reviews. I mean, even if you go into if you read like a Game Trade magazine, which is obviously a marketing magazine, all of those reviews in there that are like written like their reviews are written by the marketing departments of those games.
I think back to years ago, a friend of mine, we tried to start our own like stop motion animation studio. It was something that we were into, a really big hobby. And someone had said to us, Don't ever sell out. Do this for the integrity of it. And my friend just blurted out. He goes, "Oh, I'm selling out the minute I can." And so I do kind of the measure of difference between us. Like like the podcasting thing, I just do it for fun, and that's why it's so endearing to hear that you're keeping the heart of this. You enjoy designing games, you enjoy putting out the product, and you're going to let it speak for itself. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that it kind of comes back from my background as a film producer, in that I kind of came up with this axiom, and I don't know if you're familiar with the contractor triangle, where you can have something good, you can have it fast, or you can have it cheap. You just pick two of them. You can't have all three, right? Mm-hmm. So you can have good and fast, cheap and good. Most people are familiar with that concept. So I came up with my own triangle, and it's called fame, fortune, artistic integrity. So you can only have two of those things. You can get famous and keep your artistic integrity. You can get money and keep your artistic integrity by selling to a very select group of clients. Or you can get fame and fortune, but you lose your artistic integrity because you have to sell out to meet the masses.
Yeah.
Sorry, was that too esoteric for your audience?
We'll have to find out if they give feedback on it.
All right.
But that makes perfect sense. Fantastic.
I let that kind of lead all of my interactions when it comes to creativity.
You set the bar high.
I do, for sure.
So I always ask this question in every interview. I don't know if it's a good question or not, but one of the things I love about this talking to designers and publishers is it's always interesting to find a history behind the name of their studio. So I have to ask, where did Joggle Games come from?
Okay, so that's a good story. So a friend of mine, his name's Joe, and I were going to start we wanted to make a video game. And we wanted to come up with a name for our company, for the two of us, that was a fun name that showed that we were like kind of a fun company, but also started with the letter J, because we both our names start with J. I'm James, he's Joe. And so we went through the dictionary and we were looking for names that didn't really have domain names registered with them that were in the technology industry at the time, right? We didn't want to have crossover with any other video game company.
Yeah.
And so after a while, we found the name Joggle, and it just kind of stuck. It just suited our mentality about how we just kind of wanted to shake things up a little bit, which is what Joggle actually means. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of that's just how that came about. We just really liked how it fit our philosophy for how we were going to approach game design, originally for video games.
Cool. Nice and quick to the point. That's a really neat story. I'm glad you didn't settle on Jiggle. It would have sounded a little bit more awkward.
Yeah, that would have been a weird name for sure. But, I think that it would suit some types of game companies.
And you're helping people develop vocabulary skills if they didn't already know what Joggle meant.
That's fair. It is an English word, although it also has a new meaning that you can see a lot online, which is juggling while you jog.
I didn't know that one.
That's relatively new. That wasn't a common thing when we picked this name. We've had this name since around 2009.
Nice. Now, the game that you introduced to me at the Gaming Guild was your title, Crown of Aragon. Now, is this your first title that you've had published?
This is our first published or our first title we're publishing as a physical, board or card game.
Okay. Is there previous designs that you tried to get published, or this was the big one? This was the one you decided you were going to start with?
So what kind of happened here is that we were doing the video game thing. We were working with Microsoft on games for Windows Phone. You may recall that. None of those games.
Very familiar with Windows Phone.
I mean, I still have a Windows Phone. I'm very happy.
I sold a lot of them.
Nice. So the point is that a lot of those games didn't come out, and it just didn't work out with the way Xbox was going and stuff. Xbox got so big so fast that just kind of overtook the entirety of their video game world for that period of history. Mm-hmm. And so around that same time, I started traveling to play Professional Magic, the Gathering, the card game. Yes. And so I was traveling on the pro circuit, and while I was traveling, I discovered this that there was this hole in the games that were out there of a good two-player game you can just play over and over again without ever getting kind of sick of it, and that had strategy, that wasn't just rock paper scissors kind of thing. So that's kind of when this game kind of came to fruition, and I kept working on it. But what happened is in the meantime, this is back in like 2012 or 13 even, and in the meantime we got the opportunity to pitch some of these licensed products for some other companies, which I can't mention, of course. And so we started working on those instead, because those are really big opportunities, where you're talking about like, hundreds of thousands or millions of units. Mm-hmm. And so as their kind of rollout plans for those have kind of been pushed, and we're kind of waiting to make the next move on those and announce them, we decided we wanted to go to this PAX Unplugged show because it was like local. And we needed to have a product if we're going to have a booth. So we decided that we love this game, and we wanted to have something. So we just put, all of our capital behind it to get it to where it was when I showed it to you. Sorry, that was kind of a rambling answer. But yeah, it is technically it's our first game. This is our big title. I've done a lot of other game design work in the past for other companies who I'd rather not talk about, but that I'm uncredited for too. So it's like, they would show me a design and I would like fix something, like a broken mechanic, or it was kind of like a combination of development and design that I would do for these smaller game companies that are now successful but weren't at the time. And so I'm uncredited. I don't even think I'm listed as like a playtester on any of them. Most of the time I ask them not to mention me, just because I'm just not a big fan of being on a product that I'm not like, that I don't have like a major controlling. So this is kind of my first big gift to the world, I guess, is this game.
Cool. Now, so you developed this. I mean, you published it specifically to have copies at PAX Unplugged. This is where I got confused, because I saw you guys at PAX Unplugged. I think I mentioned that when we met in person. My friends got to go over and demonstrate it, but I was off somewhere else. But I recognized the game, so when you brought it out, I'm like, I know I've seen this before. Now, you created the PAX Unplugged edition of this. What is your ultimate goal with the Kickstarter? You want to bring it out to the masses at this point? Like, you want to get more copies out there, I assume. Yeah,
we want to do a retail version that has like an actual box and a real game board and counters for you to measure influence. I mean, things things that are kind of nice to haves, but also are would make it more palatable to the average board game collector or player. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we want to add some of the content that we just couldn't afford to add to the PAX version. Because there's just one of the biggest costs in games, is the art. So to get a lot of the artwork done and the design work done really requires a larger amount of funding than what we have left to put into this project.
Oh. I mean, I have the game right in front of me, and I like the art style in this game. It's got a charm to it that fits the theme, I feel pretty well. Who was the artist on this?
His name's Matthew Moss. He has a studio called Touch Studio. He's out of Japan. He's an American who lives in Japan. And the art is incredible. We're still going to be working with him to continue it, but I mean, he needs to eat and feed his family too. Mm-hmm. So I just, so that's the thing. It's like to do even more would be an even bigger out-of-pocket expense. So we produced 200 copies of the game for PAX Unplugged, and we sold all of them. And I feel like that was no small feat, considering we had zero advertisement and nobody knew who the heck we were. Mm. But at the same time, that was not like profitable. You know what I mean? That just paid to go to that show. So we still haven't recouped all the costs that go along with the art and all the design work that went before that. And literally nobody who's worked on this project other than the artist has been paid at this point, right? And it's because he's an outside person. He's not part of our internal group. Now, the thing that's interesting with the Kickstarter is that we're moving towards a like actual sustainable model where we can continue to produce this game over time and keep doing add-ons. Because the thing about the game is, though, even though it's a very good self-contained game, there's a ton of design space that we've found as we've worked on it that can make the game better and just grow it over time. And in order to do that, we need to hit a sustainable model where it can actually be sold at retail. I mean, right now we have 2 retail backers on the Kickstarter already who are interested. So, I mean, I think that the game has a lot of potential. In fact, some distributors wanted me to go direct to them and not do it a Kickstarter.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I agree. There's definitely a hole in the 2-player market. I don't know how popular it is, but I often find myself, like, my wife and I love to game together, and we'll go through our collection and be like, okay, nobody could come over, or we didn't have anybody over, the kids are asleep, what do you play? And so far I've played this game several times since I picked up a copy from you, and nice. It's fun. I mean, it's a nice subtle 2-player game. I mean, do you want to go over
The Kickstarter does fund just so that we can get this stuff out to people.
No, did you choose this setting because you like the history of it, or it just kind of fit the mechanics of the game that you wanted to make?
Well, first let me say that I've fallen in love with this setting, with the history of medieval Spain since I started working on this game. But I constantly am on like a Wikipedia rabbit hole looking up stuff. But the way this game's setting came about is actually a story back to an earlier design of mine. So I really loved the game Carcassonne when it came out in 2001, and at the time, so, one of the best. So especially the core original game and its first expansion.
That's one of the games that got me into this. So
yeah, it got a lot of people into it. I was actually helping out at a game store at the time, and I sold over 100 copies that Christmas when it came out, because I basically just told people, hey, if you don't want it, just bring it back, I'll take it. And I wasn't lying to them. I actually have about 6 copies of the base game. Well, we used to play a variant where everybody had their own copy, and so that way you always had the same 72 tiles.
Oh,
man.
really,
yeah, it's really fun. But one of the things I really wanted was more tiles for Carcassonne. And I also wanted to make my own board game. So I had come up with a design for a board game, which at the time was called, which didn't have a name yet, but it is a tile laying kind of war/civilization game, kind of an Age of Empires vibe to it. And I gotten pretty far into the design, and I wanted it to be related to Carcassonne. And I was doing some stuff about history of Carcassonne, and I found that all these medieval kingdoms right to the south of France in Spain were like, connected to Carcassonne by mountains, and mountains were what I wanted to put in my game instead of cities. And they had this really rich, deep history. So I just got really into it. And so this game was called Kingdoms of Aragon, and it kind of got put on the back burner, and I just hadn't thought about it. So when Phil, my design partner, and I worked on this, we were brainstorming ideas for a game. We let's get together. We want to do a game. Let's just get together and work on a game. And he didn't really have an idea about where to start. And I said, well, I have this idea for a game where you use the cards from the board game as their own game. And I have a design called Kingdom of Aragon where this would work, but I can't find the rules I wrote. So we just started brainstorming ideas, and we ended up coming up with these mechanisms based on some of my core ideas that I originally had that became Crown of Aragon. And so we just ended up naming it Crown of Aragon because it wasn't Kingdoms anymore, and it's just this 2-player game versus a board game. But so it's like a super long story of how the name of this game came about and how the setting came about. But I would say that medieval Spain does not get enough love in history, like in the way they teach history in the United States. So I'm really excited to explore it further and just open the world up to all this possible.
So, full disclosure, when I was explaining this game on the show to Sean, my co-host, he didn't realize what Aragon was, and we ended up looking it up. So we educated the audience on it and opened our minds to the history as well. So.
Yeah, and of course, lately it's become like a political issue, so that has nothing to do with our game, but it's fine. I mean, it's kind of like if you wanted to make a game about the Civil War, you couldn't avoid the whole idea of the South versus the North.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of built in there. So you had a whole game design that's now lost to time? Is that what you're...
No, I found that.
You found
game.
the rules.
Yeah, I found the Kingdom of Aragon rules. I'm not sure we'll ever make it. I don't know if a tile laying civilization style game is something that I have enough time and energy to build out and playtest right now. Where we have a sequel to Crown of Aragon, like 90% ready to go if we can kind of get the ball rolling on this. And we do have another game we just started working on that is a customizable card game, but not collectible. But in the same vein as like a Netrunner or a Magic, where you have to build your own deck to play versus somebody else. But you have a fixed pool of cards, so it's not like a collectible game. But not like an LCG either. I mean, it's hard to explain. But the point is that kind of is going to probably take a lot of my brain power in the near future. But I would love to go back and explore it someday. I'm just not sure now is the right time for that in the market.
Well, I do love tile laying, so let me know, and I'll be happy to playtest.
Well, I did playtest it back when it was an original design, so I still have my playtest components, and I do have the rules still. So if you ever really get on my good side, I wouldn't mind showing it.
All right then. So you already kind of mentioned, but future projects after this one, you said once this takes off, you want to do a sequel game. Can you tell us anything about the sequel game? Like what it'll entail? Is it just
It would be a standalone 2-player game, very similar in components to Crown of Aragon, set in medieval Spain as well, and compatible with, but you'd be able to play it on its own. So it would be it's a very different game, but imagine, if you will, another deck of 54 cards that change the way you play the game you already know. Okay.
So it keeps the tug-of-war elements of Crown of Aragon, and you can add it in, and just adds more to do?
It's a totally different experience. I mean, I don't, not to distract too much from, Crown of Aragon, which is done and great, and, obviously please back it. But this other game is for a different type of player, and the thing about it is that you couldn't, you wouldn't be able to play it if you didn't already know the base Crown of Aragon mechanic. So if you think of Crown of Aragon as kind of like your intro or to the whole concept of this tug of war mechanic, because there really aren't any other games that have this. This is like just kind of like imagine, if you will, Dominion is a deck builder, and then because Dominion worked, now you get legendary and encounters and all
I
the
gotcha. Okay, so it's a more advanced version of these mechanics, adding more complexity to it.
Yeah, exactly. But if you have both, you would be able to combine them to play change your experience.
Well, cool. I mean, I definitely want to see this successful, and I would be interested to see what that would entail.
Well, let's get this one done, and then we'll start playtesting that one more with strangers, and you can be one of those people if you so desire.
Oh, fantastic.
Not that you're a stranger, Zach, at this point. I mean, I've met you, and now I'm talking to you on your podcast, so I'm going to call you a acquaintance. I've upgraded you from stranger to acquaintance.
Fantastic. Oh, man. I love these
Real
titles.
talk with James.
I'm an acquaintance. Usually that's given as an insult.
Well, no, it's like I was born in the 80s, so for me, acquaintance is somebody I actually want to see more than once, as opposed to like somebody. So like a friend is somebody that'll help you bury a body. That's kind of how I look at it.
I don't know if I'm quite there yet, so we'll stick with acquaintance.
Perfect.
All right. Oh man, this so the Kickstarter, you have how many days left on this?
We only have 17 days, I think. Maybe when you post this, it might be 16.
Yes. All right. So how's it going for you? Are you nail biting right now, or?
I don't really have that type of reaction to anything. I'm not really worried. If it doesn't fund, it doesn't fund, and I'll just be sad that people don't get to play the game, and we'll figure out some other way to get the game to more people. Mm-hmm. But if it does fund and it does exceed expectations, then I'll be really happy to be able to bring it to even more people. And to bring more content and interact with more people. I mean, one of my favorite things I've gotten out of this experience is really just hearing back from people that have enjoyed it. I think that, you spend a lot of time creating something, and then you put it out into the world, and you never hear back if anybody liked it. Like I imagine it's like an artist, like who does a painting or whatever, and they sell it to somebody. And sure, when they first sold it to them, they're like, they loved it. But then like 5 years later, does that person call you up and say, hey, I still have that hanging in my living room and I love it, Now, I try to do that with all the pieces of art I buy, but that's not always, people don't always do that. But with games, people have this kind of emotional, visual experience with them, and they share them with their friends and family and even strangers at conventions and stuff. So they kind of, it creates a different thing. And so I get a lot of feedback back from people, and even rules questions are really interesting to me, because it's like, oh, we never looked at it like you are looking at it. There's a card in the game called the Library. And we agonized over the wording on this card, and I'm sure you've looked at this card and read it a couple times and been like, why is it worded like this? And the card says, during your draft phase, put the first card no one drafted into your hand. I think that's the wording on the card. And so it just sounds weird. It's like, put the first card no one drafted. But the reason it's worded that way is because we knew that there were other cards that could someday affect the draft. So imagine instead of drafting 3 cards, you drafted 4 cards, and you didn't put the first card they discarded. You put you wouldn't put any card they discarded of your choice. You'd have to put the first card they discarded, or depending on how a 4-card draft would work. But so that's we kind of built that in. But one of the first rules questions we got was, does that mean the first card in the discard pile that no one drafted, or is the first card drafted this phase? And so we've already thought about how to reword that card if we do print the game for the Kickstarter. So things like that have been really interesting to me. And I've also just gotten there was a guy on Board Game Geek who so he bought it at PAX Unplugged, and at PAX Unplugged we didn't have any kind of influence tracking technology apparatus. So we just suggested people use D10s or beads or coins or poker chips or whatever. But he didn't want to carry D10s with him. So he went into Photoshop and made a little tracking board that is exactly the size of 2 cards, and you can fold it in half and put it right in your deck and carry it with you. And I was just like, man, that is awesome. I gave him a bunch of geek gold. I was like, thank you so much for doing this. It's one of those things where people just, when they like something, they support it, and I really appreciate that.
Cool. So it sounds like this has been a good learning experience. You get a lot of good feedback. Even now at the Kickstarter level, people are reaching out to you and, helping in different ways. That's pretty cool. I'm going to have to check that thread out on Board Game Geek because I would like that. I got dice everywhere, but at the same time, if I take this with me, I don't have dice on me usually. Mainly, I was just writing it down.
Oh, that's an interesting way to do it. It's kind of a little difficult because it can go back and forth so much. So what I usually do is I take a Magic the Gathering size deck box, and if you take the game with sleeves and put it in that deck box, you can actually fit 3 D10s in the box pretty easily. The other thing you can do, which is kind of interesting, is you can take a couple like spare change, and you can just stack them in groups where a quarter is 5 influence, and then say 4 pennies would be 1 influence each, and then the dime would be the crown. And so what you do is you just take 1 penny, 1 penny, 1 penny. If you need 5, you just take the quarter and put the other ones back. And if you get everything, you have the whole stack. Just another way to do it.
Yeah. What I ended up doing when I had to track it was basically just a little tally mark system, and then I would just erase it. I was using a pencil. Worked fine.
Nice. Pencil in 2018, that's, more power to you.
I kept it low tech. I was going to say 2018 having loose change on you is that's also pretty rare nowadays. So
That's true. Fair.
Nobody needs loose change for the payphones anymore.
That's right. Man, what am I going to do? I've been carrying all this change hoping that I would run into a payphone.
Or an arcade.
Yeah, well, even those don't even run off actual money anymore.
No, they just use the tokens. It's sad.
Thank God. Who wants to actually carry this stuff around with you?
I remember being as a kid, I would save my quarters for the arcade. It was great. Now, not so much. Now I just give my quarters to my kids for doing mundane tasks around the house.
When I was a little kid, I said to my dad I wanted to be a millionaire, and he said, "There's $1 million on the ground. You just have to pick it up." And to this day, I still pick up every piece of change I see.
We found $1 the other day walking the dog. It was great.
Yeah, I found several $100 bills on the ground in my lifetime just by paying enough attention to the ground. I think that people just kind of discount it. They're like, oh, whatever. I'm not gonna. Could be nothing on the ground that's worth my time to stop for, but it's there.
Good advice. See, we're giving good advice. We're letting people know about a great game, some cool history behind it, and words to live by. Pay attention to the ground when you walk, folks.
Yeah, you don't want to trip over yourself. You spend time looking at your phone and you just
that too.
Run into people and don't get any change.
Or they're catching Pokemon.
Oh, well, yeah. But even then, you can still see it. I think if I was really into Pokemon Go, I'd probably notice spare change while I was trying to catch a Pokemon.
Trying too hard to catch the Pokemon to have time to pick up the change.
Fair. But, you have to be making a lot per hour to not make it worth your time to pick up a penny.
That's true. All right. Well, was there any other things you wanted to go over for the Kickstarter? Any advice for people? Shout-outs?
I don't know. I would like to give so I don't have any advice. My advice with Kickstarter is don't do it. That was always my advice, so I'm gonna stick to it even though I'm on Kickstarter right now. the generally speaking, the Kickstarters that exist right now are being created by very, very well funded projects that don't need your money and are just using it to emotionally manipulate you into backing them by giving you exclusive things you can only do that, and if you miss out, you won't get them. And I totally disapprove of that. In fact, our Kickstarter promo that we call our direct order promo will be available to people that purchase the game directly from us afterwards. Why we call it a direct order promo. So while it is exclusive to Kickstarter now, it will not be exclusive for all time. Second of all, I think that if you are going to do a Kickstarter, and you just make sure you have game art before you do it, and make sure you know what you're getting into. Because a lot of the stuff in this industry costs a lot more money than you realize, and you can set your goal too low. So some people have accused me of setting my goal too high. But the reality is, if we don't hit our goal, it doesn't actually make financial sense for us to make the game that we're promising in this Kickstarter. So while I could have started my goal lower and guaranteed that I got like $1,500, we never would have been able to produce the quality of game we want to produce for the audience. And so we would have just been another in a long line of Kickstarters that doesn't give you what they said they were going to give you. So instead, we set our goal at the actual amount of money we need to make this game. And each of our stretch goals is specifically designed to pay for those stretch goals. So, I mean, that's kind of my two advice. Make sure that your goal is set accurately to what it actually is going to cost to do the thing, and make sure you're making some money for yourself. Because if you don't make any money off of it, you're not going to be able to do it again. You're just going to constantly be working for nothing and not getting anything out of it. Stegmeyer, the guy who did Scythe, has some great articles on that. I would read all his articles on Kickstarter. I was always reading them back when he was publishing a lot of them. I also
going to point that out. Like Jamie Stegmeyer has those articles. They're a great read, and they open my mind to what the publisher has to go through on Kickstarter. Like especially a smaller publisher, that's what Kickstarter was originally designed for. And it's really nice to see when people are actually using it for what it was meant for. And
I agree.
It's baffling, like the amount of fees and the things that you got to pay for. It's like, oh, actually, yeah, you could brag that you made $1 million, but at the same time, how much of it was actually yours? So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if your game's going to make $1 million on Kickstarter, you probably don't need to be on Kickstarter.
That too.
Right? Like a good example of that, and it's a fine game, is Seventh Continent. And they have this claim in their Kickstarter that the game would be impossible to make at retail. Well, it turns out that if you're selling 7 or 8 million copies of something, you can get that price down pretty low, and that game totally could be available at retail. So, not a popular opinion, maybe, but that's the reality.
I didn't play it. I don't know anything about it, actually.
Oh no, I don't mean the game. The game is fine. It's a solo kind of choose your own adventure game. It's a really cool idea, actually, and it has a ton of great components. The thing is, it's just a bunch. It's mostly just cards. So like the fallacy that they wouldn't be able to produce it at a price that could be sold through retail channels is just not true. They just saw Kickstarter as a really good place to get market share. Yeah. Which is fine. I mean, I'm pro capitalism. Do whatever works. I just want the people that back things to understand exactly what's going on and not just back things blindly. So what we really need your help to get this game out there. So if you like this game, please just consider, sharing it with somebody who might like it. Like, that's huge. I love that. Back it for $1 just so people that follow you on Kickstarter will see it. There's so many things you can do. You don't want the game? We've got a great funny t-shirt that says, I backed Crown of Aragon on Kickstarter and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. You don't get the game, you just get the t-shirt, but at least you can say that you helped us bring it out to the public.
Which level is that at?
Oh, it's called the Courtier. It's pledged $25 or more. Yeah, you get a t-shirt. You only get a t-shirt that says I backed it on Kickstarter and all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Yeah. It's kind of an inside, well, I guess not really an inside joke. It's an 80s joke, all these lousy t-shirts. We did, because a lot of people that wanted the game also wanted a t-shirt, we did kind of make a second t-shirt, or we will make a second t-shirt that says I backed it and I also got this t-shirt, this lousy t-shirt. So you can get one that says also, even if you buy the game, but you can't get the one that says all I got, Well,
I just switched to the t-shirt because that's awesome.
Well, you do have the,
in real time, folks.
you do have the preview edition, and you can also the game will be available if you buy a t-shirt. I promise you, if this game funds, you will be able to buy a copy of this game in December I can't. I'm gonna say in the November-December timeframe at PAX Unplugged.
We're hoping to be there too. So if you're there, definitely check it out. We're hoping to be at PAX Unplugged this year, and if you're there, we will check it out. That's what I say.
See. Yes. Well, Joggle will be at PAX Unplugged. We have a double booth this year, so we're pretty excited to go back.
Fantastic. Hopefully you're not next to Gale Force 9 like you were last year, because I got distracted by their Doctor Who game.
Oh, no, they're great guys. I was happy to be next to them. Actually, they brought us a lot of traffic because they were so popular, right? So yeah. I actually really like being next to somebody that's got a good fan base like them that makes a good product.
Well, if they have Doctor Who expansions, I will be distracted and I won't come over to talk to you. That's what I'm saying.
We didn't, if I'm being honest, Zach, we didn't have room for you probably. I mean, we were running out of space to demo the game. That's kind of why we went with the double booth this year.
Nice.
We just could not sit down enough people. We only could fit about 8 people in our booth to demo it, and we always had people trying to get in.
There was plenty of room for you to expand outward too. Like, that's one of the things I really dug about the convention. I'm like, there's so much space. You can just walk around. There's no... I was expecting it to be super crowded because I hear horror stories of conventions. I don't go to a lot of them, but PAX Unplugged, it was nice, wide walking areas between booths. It was great.
Yeah, it had a crush of people sometimes, but I think that you never felt like you were like surrounded or claustrophobic about it. So the thing I loved about it was that it was so many people that were literally just there for tabletop games, because as you know, all the other PAXs share with mostly the video game industry. So you get like this kind of weird crossover thing where half the people aren't interested in half the thing the other people are doing. So it was really nice to have a show dedicated to that, and it was really good to have it that time of year because there really isn't anything else anywhere. I mean, that's in the same thing, even though they picked up the same weekend as BGG Con. That's like a really small con, technically.
Yeah, I heard things about that. I was having fun at PAX Unplugged anyway.
I mean, I couldn't get down to BGG Con. I had to pick, and Philadelphia is only 6 hours away, so we were able to get there. It's just the one that's closest to us, right? Yeah. The Northeast needed a good convention in that November, December timeframe, and that's what PAX Unplugged was and is. And it looks like they're going to double down on it and do it even better this year. I'm really excited for all the stuff they've told me they're doing. I know they haven't announced anything exactly precise yet, but it is happening, and we're going to be there. We might even be able to run a Crown of Aragon tournament, which we're pretty excited about.
Oh. And I'm going to have to practice more.
Yeah, it's going to be capped at 32 people, so not everybody might be able to get in there because there's limited space in those tournament halls and stuff, and we're yeah, it's going to be a fun time.
Cool. And maybe someday we'll get a gaming convention in Rhode Island area so we can have something there.
We had one here, but they decided not to do it anymore. But there's I think Captain Con, isn't that local?
Yes, I have heard of that one. I didn't get to go to it.
I think that one's local. I haven't been to
the one
it either.
in Total Con is pretty close too. But
right, my friends run a mini convention, a one-day convention called BarryCon in Barrington. That's actually happening this month, and it's supporting a really good cause. It's the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation, and if you don't know what that is, it's a type of blood cancer that's super rare, so there's not as much research done for it, but it really affects the people. We actually I happen to know someone in real life that has that disease, unfortunately, and so they're raising money for that, and it's called BarryCon, and they're in Barrington. The date for that, I think it's the week before our Kickstarter ends. Yeah, it's July 21st, Saturday, July 21st in Barrington at the Democratic Social Club. No politics involved, it's just the name of the place. So if you want to hit up a gaming con where you just play some board games with some guys guys and girls, that's a really good place to do it.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I don't think I could go at such short notice, but possibly next year.
Yeah, no, this is their 4th year, so I'm pretty sure they're going to keep doing it.
Cool. Well, James, it's been really fun talking to you about this project. I'm excited for it. I wish you really good luck with this Kickstarter. And yeah, do you have anything else you want to add?
I just want to say thanks for having me. I mean, it's really been a pleasure meeting you, and I've listened to some of your other episodes now, and I really like what you're doing, so keep doing it. And if you're listening and you have trouble finding good 2-player games, like I know I've always have, I mean, there's plenty of good ones, but you want something that you can pack up and take with you everywhere you go, this Crown of Aragon's a good one to do, and it's only $20 on Kickstarter right now.
I agree. You should definitely check it out. I've been playing it for 2-3 months now, however long it's been since I picked up the copy, and I'm happy with it. So definitely jump over on Kickstarter. There's still plenty of time left to back Crown of Aragon.
Thanks so much, Zach. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this show, why not check out some of the other projects on the And All the Nerdy Fun Network, including Critical Failure, a show where a bunch of people with absolutely no experience with RPGs decide to sit down and try Dungeons & Dragons. Or Bored with Friends. It's a book club style show where we just discuss things other than board games, like comic books, movies, TV shows, just all sorts of pretty much anything really. Also, check out our YouTube channel, In All the Nerdy Fun, where we're going to have video reviews of different board games. All the podcasts are available on there to listen to, and who knows what other projects might show up. If you really enjoyed this show, reach out to us on Twitter and let us know, @BoredWithFriend. Like us on Facebook, or give us an iTunes review, always helpful. Or head on over to our website, boredwithfriends.blogspot.com. Either way, thanks for listening.